Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ryan, and I'm flanked by...
I'm Nerdarchist Ted.
And I'm Nerdarchist Dave.
And today we're going to do a video response, a little necro video responsing to Being Everything Else's Embracing Chaos. So this was a cool series done by Adam Colwell, who was one of the co-writers on Dungeon World, which is a really cool open sandboxy D&D game, D&D retro clone sort of thing. You've played it?
Yeah, I love Dungeon World.
So it was kind of a it uses the Apocalypse World sort of way of playing, and also Steve Lumpkin, who is actually I believe he's a game developer, and he does stuff with Warhammer 40K video games, I think, something like that. Maybe it's either the MMO or maybe a first-person shooter.
Well,
I might be off on that.
Before we get too deep into this video, though, why don't you guys go deep down to the description, sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get gaming tips delivered straight to your inbox weekly, as well as learn how to game with us
and level up.
So it's not it's not on their channel, though.
So it's actually on Roleplay's channel. So there's a lot of explaining.
Yeah, but Roleplay's channel isn't actually called Roleplay.
It's ItMeJP, but on Twitter they're at real Roleplay, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's a way to find
Roleplay
it.
was taken.
Yeah, probably. So or somebody made like a clone account before they got on to doing it. But yeah, it's on ItMeJP. So if you're not familiar with Roleplay, they produce like a lot of ItMeJP produces a lot of really cool role playing games with like streamers, like YouTubers.
Yeah.
And people that do stuff on Twitch and that sort of situation.
Yeah, I've seen them do Shadowrun, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, like a lot of different games on there as well.
Yeah, and then they have, which Steve Lumpkin runs, this segment called R&D, which they literally do just like short story arcs, and they play a different game system every single time. So, they might be doing Dungeon World one stretch of running a game, and then like Traveler or some other very obscure game another. So it's pretty cool.
Which is very cool. So what I found interesting about this video that they did was it was really all about putting more randomness into your game and using random charts to basically tell the story. Because, I mean, let's face it, you got the writer of Dungeon World. That game is all about agency.
Right.
From the players, from the Dungeon Master, or Game Master. And they even make the point of saying, like, where the randomness doesn't really matter for the DM, where it comes from, because like if you're playing a game that's got a heavy amount of player agency into it, like you have no idea what your players are going to throw at you and what they're going to add to the game, but once they do, then you just have to kind of react.
Yeah, you're playing defense as the GM.
My solely the lone game of Dungeon World that I played at Philly Games Con, like I played a dwarven cleric. And it's like, oh, well, what are you questing for? And I'm just like, oh, I'm questing for some, holy artifact that's, supposed to be for the dwarves. And, he's like, all right, yeah, sure, no problem. So it's like, it could be literally have been anything. Oh, I'm trying to kill stuff. I'm trying to find this thing. So like,
our village's holy chicken is missing.
Yeah.
So like, there really is there's really no way to be able to be prepared for that type of setup. So I mean,
the GM is always on their feet for that game,
right?
For sure.
So like they take that premise a step further, going whether you can do that as a GM in your own game by just having random tables and pretty much rolling for everything. Like they even talked about things like the random encounter determines the monster, and then another check determines what the monster's about.
Motivation,
right.
yeah,
and there might be another thing that determines whether you find the monster in its lair or outside of its lair.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about that is they're talking about how it kind of like takes the stress of having to come up with a good and clever story. Because like Adam's, one of his big like mantras is sort of like, story is the thing that happens when you're away from the table. Like as a GM, you don't really ever get to really set the story. The story is this thing that you tell about what happened at the table, which is a really interesting take on it, because that's completely like getting away from the GM. Oh, this is my story, my world, I'm the god, and whatever. Like it's nonsense, because it never really happens. So like he's saying that let this randomness inform your game, and then you're like, all right, how do I rationalize this thing being involved? Yeah,
like the idea of, instead of the GM coming to the table with a story that the players are going to go through, basically the GM is going to go to the game. He's going to like referee some things. He's going to put out some maybe interesting choices or whatever, or just react to what the players do. And then after you guys are done and the last D20 has been rolled for the night, that's the story.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that thing you came to the table with prior, which is an interesting take.
It's something I really like to sort of a good way to frame it.
I like the concept, but the problem is how do you take that from session to session to session? You know, like you can't. You know, you can't really provide, you know, some kind of overarching story as if after every session it's like, okay, well, how do I lump this together? How do I keep this going? And how do you actually get to a resolution if everything is random?
Well, I mean, so here's the thing. Like, you might have like sort of like, once you know what your players want to do, like their character motivations, you might have your sort of M. Bison sort of villain, you know, like M. Bison, Street Fighter, you know, like basically all the people in the tournament for Street Fighter had a connection to M. Bison. He'd screwed up their life in some way, shape, or form, right?
He was a big jerk.
So if you wanted to have your big bad evil guy in the campaign, you figure out like what this character has done, or this villain has done, affected all your players. You could have him at the end having puppeteered a lot of things.
Right.
So, like, figure out on this randomness. Like, sometimes randomness is just randomness. Like, not every single thing that happens in the story arc is directly related to the main villain.
Absolutely.
You could have side plots. You could just have random shit that happens, like encounters with wild animals. Right. Like, they're just wild animals and they're there. But yeah, or you can figure out, all right, how do I connect this to my big bad evil guy?
Yeah, the thing happened, and how was he involved?
Yeah,
you know, even though they never saw him, you know, that session or whatever.
Right.
You know, he could have been the, you know, maybe you did do some things randomly, and you know why the adventurers were, you know, going through the forest. They come across a bandit camp. Well, you know, even though he wasn't there, but maybe those bandits worked for him. So, like, there's definitely ways you can tie things back in.
Or,
you know, realistically speaking, like, not everything needs to wrap up nice and neat. I mean, how many times have you watched a movie and the greatest part about the movie is you're like,
it's ambiguous.
Oh, they didn't wrap this up. Does that mean there's going to be a sequel, or you know what does that mean? And it actually invokes, you know, thought and question thereafter. And
sometimes it just pisses you off. I just watched The Intern the other night with the family, and you know, De Niro and Anne Hathaway, can't go wrong. And they ended it, and you're like, that's not an ending. What the F?
Yeah. Well, yes, there is definitely you know, there's art and science into getting the
resolution,
you know, resolution enough that everybody's happy, but having some things still a little open so that, you know, the story can continue, or you leave them wanting more.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, like, so there's this Guy Ritchie movie, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, where like this guy has this duffel of like these antique rifles that are worth a lot of money, but they're also evidence linking them to a crime. And his friends are frantically calling them because they just realized the value of these rifles that he's about to drop off a bridge into like a big body of water to get rid of evidence. So the phone is in his mouth, ringing as he has the duffel getting ready to put it in. So it's the question of, does he get the phone call, or does he just drop them into the river and then get the phone call? Like, what happens in that exact moment as it ends? Yeah.
So a big thing...
I totally spoiled that movie. So
yeah, send your hate comments to Ryan below. Yeah. So one of the big things
it's been out for like 15 years, this movie. So
I tried that with Game of Thrones, and you called me a jerk. But,
yeah.
It's not my fault.
It's me, but this time it's me.
Oh, right. Yeah. So one of the big things we're talking about is story versus experience. Like, why are you playing this game? Is it to tell the story, or is it to enjoy the experience at the table? Which is also another interesting concept, because for years that's actually how we ran our game, where
you script everything out, and
Well, no. Well, I mean, in the sense that there was no for me anyway. There was never really an overarching story. Like, I didn't have this big, grandiose, complex plot ending campaign. I was just, we were going to keep if he kept showing up at my house on Saturday, I was going to run D&D.
Dungeons and Dragons are gonna
yeah, and it was going to be based off of what you guys are doing. So you know, so there was no endpoint when I started the game. It's just we were going to play, and we played D&D, and that was it. Saturday something.
No, it's funny because it does like kind of in a way, it kind of runs counterintuitive to what we talk about when we're talking about starting with the end in mind, and like to have a finite end inside of your game. But I think if you session zero hew into what your player character's motivations are, and you make the game about that, you can find a way to actually have an arc. But all the story is open ended up until that climax of the story.
And that's kind of what I try to do, and it's only in recent years that I've had that start with the end in mind, but leaving the open space in the middle to work towards that and allow that end to be flexible and change. If you take a PVC pipe and you swing it around, that end wibbles and wobbles around. It's going to be in a different position from where it started, but you can still get there.
You are a hollow reed. You are a hollow reed.
I'm hollow. But I mean, so you have the ability to still be able to get that story, but be able to have it change throughout the course of the game, so that you can have a planned end, so that the campaign can be over and you can move on to the next one. But at the same time, it can move based on what the player's actions are, and it's like, oh well, is it going to be in this location? Is it going to be in that location? Are the players going to go after the bad guy, or is the bad guy going to come after the good guys? There's lots of different options for that, and you might be able to say, all right, well, maybe we're not going to get there, because what happens if the players decide to make a completely left turn
and they decide that villain's not important to them and solving that problem?
So,
although you should absolutely make the things that he was going to do happen, and they hear about it.
Absolutely, that stuff will still transpire, and the PCs are off doing this other thing, and it's now impacted your campaign world.
Yeah. So, but I guess we should bring it back into chaos. But chaos broke out. It's good. But so I remember you brought up the really good point about when they were talking about random weather charts, and like in the spring rolling like thunderstorms,
for like 6 weeks straight or something.
Yeah, like something ridiculous. Like So
why have the gods?
I don't remember which one of them said it, but the other one's like, if that happened in a game I was playing in as a player, I'd be like, why are the storm gods so angry? What's going on? And I would think that was actually one of the hooks, right? A plot, a point, and
but it was just randomly rolling.
Right. But to their way of doing it, that's when the player is taking agency in the game, going, oh, this is now important to me. I have to figure out why the god of thunder is angry, and maybe that wasn't a thing until the player spoke it into existence.
Right.
And so now you can do something with that if you want. Yeah.
No, now the players are following that hook. So as GM, like, what I'm thinking too now, like, your job as GM is to basically just be a half step ahead of the players. Like, oh, you're saying that this thing's going to happen?
Well, of
or
course
we're
it
going to
is.
explore. So let me generate these NPC villains or whatever. Like, so this way, next session when they're going to investigate that, you start creating some villains that are like lightning themed or whatever, or servitors of the thunder god.
Right.
Or you find out that there's this orc tribe that worships this god of thunder, and they've been making sacrifices to him for 6 weeks straight to keep the thunderstorms going, because maybe they have an ulterior motive.
Right.
Maybe they're trying to cause mudslides to the
Take out
town
the
and the
village.
valley. Yeah. So you could have fun with it and do different things like that. And then also it's like, it goes back to that point where DMs are like, oh, I can never get the players to take my hooks.
The players just baited the hook for you, right?
Yeah,
They just made the hook and put the chum on it. Like,
Well, not even that. They just put it in their mouth. Or like they pulled the hook out of their pocket and just like right in their own cheek.
Yeah.
So like you can try and feed them your hook, or you can just use the one they put there.
yeah, and like, if you're still having fun, you don't have to worry about your big highfalutin story. It's a good time.
Absolutely.
So,
They also talk about an interesting concept that isn't really a concept of the no but. Like, so this is like a wordplay on yes but.
They had talked about saying that you always want to say yes, like within reason, and it's like instead of just yes, it's yes and. And like we've talked about this before, it's really yes and yes but, because it's like, well, yeah, you can do that thing you want to do, but this is why it's different. Yes, and yeah, you can do that,
And here's the other piece.
here's the other piece, and then yes is just I got no problem with that, But as you said, they talked about the no but.
yeah. Do you remember the specific anecdote?
I believe they're talking about squirrel people.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, there wasn't going to be any squirrel. I didn't see squirrel people happening. But then, so what he
This
did
is probably maybe was it Steven or Adam? Because like Adam's run a bunch of Dungeon World because he was one of the people that made the game. So
he completely changed the players' how the player kind of envisioned the squirrel people, because he just said squirrel people, right? No description, nothing. So then later, I think in that campaign or in that game or whatever, he has squirrel people show up, except for they're nothing like the player imagined.
Are they like predators? Because I would want them to be predators. Like, oh my god, no!
Look at those teeth.
Yeah, big nasty pointy teeth. Like,
Look, squirrels have some really nasty looking teeth.
well, I mean, especially too, like if you made a squirrel like 6 foot tall, could you imagine the damage it could do? Yeah,
Would not
terrible.
feel good.
Yeah,
No, I don't think so.
yeah, bad time.
Stay away from my nuts, goddammit.
Yeah. And way to bring it down. Yeah,
No problem. I know you guys were thinking it.
No, not at all.
just you.
How can you not go to nuts? It's a squirrel, for the love of God.
Yeah. All right. So, do we get back on track, or have we delved to plumb the depths of chaos here?
I think so. I guess like the key thing is like one of the reasons why we do these videos is so in case you guys haven't heard of these other YouTube channels out there, we want you to go check them out. They're offering great content, and a channel like this one offers a lot of variety of content, so you guys can get exposed to different games and different concepts that you're probably not used to. Maybe.
And in this case, different game masters.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So a little curation of content there.
So, let us know if you've watched the video. Let us know in the comments below what you think. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on Instagram.
Or you can check out funny memes over on Facebook.
Until next time,
Stay nerdy.